again move to the slideshow. So I will be keep going on. Please bear all.
Not an issue. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let us proceed further. Today's topic, the two factors we are going to consider in today's topic, that is the problem identification and formulation. And the second part deals with the art of writing a literature review. These are the outline about the topics to be discussed in today's session. Let us begin with a very simple question. That is how to begin with the research development or a paper development, or maybe with a development to your thesis or the to your thesis. So there's are the one of the 5 ways we should try to answer before proceeding for developing any research proposal or for developing any thesis work. The most important ones are why, who, when, where, what, and finally how. We will be discussing somewhat more about in the later part of the slides. Now let's identify that what research problem is all about. So as per the words of Klinger, it is an interrogative sentence or the statement that asks the relationship or the relation exists between two or more variables. In simple way, we can say that a research problem is something which try to identify the research gap which is available to the various research papers. You may choose to look these practical problems aimed at contributing to change or theoretical problems aimed at expanding knowledge. So ultimately, it is later on also defined that research problem is something which there is some gap exists. We try to identify those gaps and try to find out the solution about it. But may not be necessary that whatever you identified is not been researched earlier. It may be to the some part of the country or maybe to some parts of the world. But anyhow, you need to identify the gap between the available resources or the reviews you have accessed and just try to proceed with that. The question arises, why to have the research problem? So ultimately, when we are having an interesting topic and we do not found a strong basis for the academic research, then it provides a base to identify the research problem. Because without a well-defined research problem, you are likely to end up with unfocused about any of the project. So ultimately, it is one of the very important concept that what to do just before proceeding, what to do, why to do, and then we'll try to find out the answer about it. There is a need of a clear problem statement in order to research that may contribute new and relevant insights about it. So whatever we try to identify must have some meaningful results or information available for the betterment of the society. So while doing a research work, it should not be just simple identifying a simple question and started working upon it. Get into the insights of it. Try to identify the sub-reasons, sub-causes, and try to develop the paper on those identified gaps. We can also say that it is the first step towards knowing exactly what you will do and why. So research problem or research statement basically provides us and guidelines that how we should proceed in our own work. Always said that well plan is half done. Just considering those factors, we must have a very clearly defined research problem. Proceeding further, these are the key components of a research problem. That must be there must be an individual or a group which may have facing difficulty to be resolved. So we can identify the research problem to the subject matter of an individual or maybe related to a group which we try to answer to try to get the answer for it. Again, there must be some objectives to be attained. It may be a singular, it may be in plural. But we will try to identify those problems with the help of the properly framed objectives, and those objectives are later to be defined, and we will try to find out the results outcomes by applying some statistical tools, suitable statistical tools, I should say. Definitely, while defining the research problem, there must be the alternative ways or the means for attaining the objectives. Means must be, at least there should be two means available for a researcher, so that he has no choice of means, then he or she cannot have a problem. So at least two means should be identified to overcome the root or to overcome the problems. If one is not found suitable, so they can proceed to the another one. There must remain some doubt in mind of a researcher with regard to the selection of the alternatives. This means the research must answer the questions concerning the relative efficiency of the possible alternatives. So once being a researcher, there may be n number of questions coming to the mind. We should try to identify the various alternatives to select the problem and try to find out the solutions for it. We have classified the research problems into three broad categories. The first one is the theoretical research problem, second is the applied research problem, and the third one is the action research problem. When we talk about the theoretical research problem, it is explanatory and provides the basic definitions of the problem areas of informational gaps. In simpler sense, this research problem is based upon some predetermined theory, and we try to identify and to find out the solutions related to those problems. Just like, for example, like Newton has framed some type of law. So he is trying to get the solution for it, and we are as a researchers is trying to extending that problem to get the better or the optimum solutions from it. So this type of research problems comes with the theoretical background. Second is applied research problems. It is much more considered with the practical aspect rather than the theoretical aspect. Theoretical problems may be the descriptive in nature, but here we want to get the real outcome of the problems. So here it includes an explanatory hypothesis and test to verify the accuracy of the hypothesis with the help of the suitable statistical tools. So applied research is more beneficiary, what I assume, as compared to theoretical problems. Third comes out to be action research problem. It is again an extension to the applied research problem. It basically focuses upon those areas where the immediate actions are to be required. Just for an example, in case if in Indore, the malaria, due to malaria, the number of patients are increasing. So the immediate action problem is like to identify the specific areas where the maximum numbers of the cases are coming upon. What are the reasons for the getting malaria, and then try to provide the solutions for it or the way how to overcome such type of problems. These are the some of the standards which provides the steps in problem identification, moving from bottom to top. That is, identify the subjects. I have consolidated into 5 steps in the later slides. So first of all, what we need to do is to identify the subject matter from where it is to be done. We need to define the problems. Don't worry, it can be redefined number of times as it is been required. To the next step, we need to proceed with the literature review. Into this session, second part, we will discuss upon it. Into the next step, design subject and go with the data collection. There is, sorry, spelling mistake. So we need to go with the data collection, data gathering, and after that, should be a data analysis. Again, it all depends upon the expertness and the past learning to apply the specific tool to get the analysis of the data. Nowadays, softwares are available so that you can identify the suitable tool and you can apply and get the outcome. But again, it is very crucial to have the correct interpretation of the data. The software will provide you the results in within seconds. But if the interpretation is wrong, then ultimately the whole of the research may provide the false information. So the next step, your work should be carried over with the implications and the conclusions. Then we should provide some recommendation to our work. And finally, the work which you have completed must be get published in some suitable journal, or it must be presented in the conferences. What is use if you have done your work for yourself and when the society is not been aware of it? So it is equally necessary, and there is a necessity to get your work published in any of the way. So I have consolidated those steps into these 5 broad categories. First is the statement of the problem in general way, but we need to move ahead in the specific model way. There is a need to understand the nature of the problem, surveying the available literature, developing the ideas through discussions among your peer groups, among yourself, and rephrasing the research problem into the working proposition. That means rephrasing the problem as per the requirement. So let us start defining our problem in a very generic way. So we have identified the problem just with an example. Does negative news interest people more than the positive news? It is a very generic problem. Okay, we have identified this problem. Now again, we need to rethink upon to modify the problem into a specific problem so that it must possesses the meaningful outcome about the related work. So we have redefined the same problem as in the later stage as, does negative news such as robbery, corruption interest people more than positive news like country's economic growth? So you can see the difference that we have redefined the statement with more descriptive words so that we should be very clear that what we need to do. So how to define the problem in the very generic way? That is, study the related subjects thoroughly and do preliminary survey to identify the problems. The next steps comes upon understanding the nature of problem. And the best way to understand is with the help of the discussions. Now, various electronic platforms are available. Various forums are there. So you can put your problem to those forums. You can have online, offline mode of discussion that can be between your peer groups, within your organization. So that you can get more information related to the problem which you want to proceed with your work. Second, discussion with the people who has good knowledge about the problem. So again, we need to identify the people whom we assume that they possesses the enough knowledge related to that particular problem. Initially, you quote what you want to do. Listen patiently. Be patient. Try to understand what those people are providing you. Again, note it down, analyze those suggestions, and try to frame or reframe, if required, with the problem so that you can have a very clear understanding related to your work. The next step. In step 3, Now let us proceed with serving the available literature. Once you have identified some problem, put in the form of the title of your work. Don't worry, your title will be modified hundreds of times unless and until your paper is completely ready. But take care that your title must match with the objective of your paper or work, and whatever the methodologies to be adopted must match with the objectives, and finally whatever the results you are getting, it should be again very clear and lined up with the methodology. So various checks are to be required whenever we proceed with our work. So moving to the next step, that is the literature survey. Ultimately, there are the very large, there may be a large number of experts who might have worked upon the topic what you want to work upon. So just try to get or collect as much information as it is been possible. Again, you can go through whether online or offline sources. This is helpful in getting in proper understanding the problem so that you can narrow down with the problem. So my suggestion, once you have some problem in your mind, start searching the papers which others have already worked upon. Save it, read it, try to identify what they want to communicate in those papers. Try to match, does this paper or the problem or objective suits to your requirement? If it does, go in depth about those particular papers, and for the rest, you can keep it for the future references. Literature review is the good source for identifying the research gap, and our paper is going to develop on the basis of that identified research gap, which you have gone through the various literatures. So you can't claim that whatever gap exists is been universal. It might be solved upon by some another researchers, but we did not gone through, or we did not get the opportunity to go through those papers. So ultimately, the research gap of the literature review has been helpful in identifying and proceeding with our objectives. Just try to get the new ideas from those research papers you go through so that you can relate with your work, and it provides a base or a help for the research designing. So once again, we should be very clear that what we want to do, why we want to do, how we will proceed, and then just keeping those things into getting into the papers. That is the same thing, developing the ideas through discussions. You have gone through the various literatures. At the same time, you have discussed your problem with many others. So why discussion is required? Number one, discussions always provides the fruitful information. It may provide you new ideas, new insights, so that it can be better incorporated in your work. So discussions are necessary. New ideas can be generated by such an exercise. Researchers must discuss his or her problem with her colleagues so that others who have having enough experience in the same area can provide you the betterment to your work. So this is in commonly also known as an experience survey. You can get an idea on the basis of some other person's work which has already been done. It will provide you a way to extend that idea or to come up with completely a new model. Next step comes upon, and that is the developing the content. So ultimately, these are the some levels required to develop the content. I think that it might not be very clear to all of you. Let me read out in very short. that is blog about your insights, create quickly. You can create the fun videos that will be helpful in your further readings and to overcome the boredom. Develop insightful, incited white papers to develop. Well, the white papers are those papers which are not published and the research work is going upon. You will find this very commonly by the foreign authors. Develop a catching some of the words which are very, very catching to you, and so upon. So these are the some of the factors must consider while developing the problem, identifying and developing the designing. So write the front matter and the executive summary. Executive summary, initially it can be prepared and can be later on modified at the end of the paper. So that is not a big issue. Next comes upon that is the rephrasing the research problem into a working proposition. So we have developed an idea. We have done the brainstorming. There are various type of exercise through which you can develop the idea. You got that idea. You wrote it down in a very similar way. Don't worry about the language, words, verbs, because it is all your work. You can rectify and modify in the later stage. Once you are firm with your identified problem, you need to get down those words. And now finally, we need to give a shape that is to be known as the rephrasing. There is a difference between the rephrasing and paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is something which already someone's work has been reshuffled, readjusted, or been making by some grammatical changes, is known as paraphrasing. But rephrasing is simply redefining the whole of the work in your own words with some meaningful outcomes. So rephrase the research problem into operational terms. That means which you can incorporate in your word. Again, frame initial research questions with why. It may be one, it may be again in plural. Just for an example, why is the productivity in China is much higher as compared to India? But once we are very clear with this problem, we need to rephrase. We have identified that impact of productivity, or why China is having more productive as compared to India. So we have gone through the various literatures, we have collected those data, and now once we are formed with this problem, we should again rephrase this research question in the form of, just for an example, what factors are responsible for higher labor productivity of China, Japan's is oblique, China's manufacturing industries during 2011 to 2020 relative to Indian manufacturing industries. So you see that we have very clearly defined the problem. So once your work has been sent to some another person to read upon, they should be very clear that exactly what you want to do. Because there may be many reasons regarding the change in the higher productivity in China. But we have reduced to identify the factors. Again, it can be 5, 6, 7 as per the availability. But we are now searching for the specific factors which are responsible for high productivity by the Chinese companies. Along with the period, we have defined the period also as compared to Indian industries. So I hope it is clear that rephrasing of the research problem is the last part of research problem designing, and it should be very, very clear to understand. So these are some of the do's and don'ts related to problem selection. This is the source of information. You can access this also. To do defining your topic is essential. First, choose your topic and refine your topic with very clear hypothesis. What you should do, define your topic. Again, just I told upon that you should refine it as many times it has been required. Even Unless and until your whole paper is been ready, then also the possibility to refine your topic exists. And most of the time, I hope that my research fellows agree with my statement. Yes, it has been changed number of times. Write on the regular basis and make a real effort not to postpone the phase of the writing process. There should be regularity in writing. Not necessary that we need to sit for the whole day and to write, but write something daily. Because if some gap exists, then those thoughts will be moved out from our mind. And again, we need to start from the scratch. So how much, yeah, whatever time permits you, but write something. Keep, keep on adding. It can be edited later on. Organize your material to form arguments. Explain your arguments in the steps and demonstrate reasoning. Arrange your material. Whatever the information, data you have collected, it should be in the specific format so that you can provide a judgment to your own work. I already talked that write first and correct later. Don't worry about grammatical errors and all these things. You just keep on writing. Think, incorporate, and note it down. This all things can be taken care of at the later stage of your work. Build confidence as a writer by analyzing the things that go well. Again, write in your own language in which you feel yourself comfortable. Again, English is not mandatory. It can be the regional language in which you can develop your paper. So, but what is most important that you need to develop the confidence in writing it. Once you are ready with one or two research paper, you already have certain ideas about it. These are some of the don'ts. Now, avoid using those subjects on which large the work is to be found to the very large extent, because it will be really a challenge to throw new light on such a case. That means it will be very difficult to provide some new identified actions in such type of works. So if I talk upon the same, that the cause of having malaria, you will find the large number of works, maybe in millions. So what else you are adding upon? Yes, it can be added, just like if we have identified some new virus. So it will be meaningful in that case. Otherwise, what others have identified, we will also put to the same extension that malaria arises due to mosquito bite, and mosquitoes are born where there is a water hoarding. You should always avoid the controversial subjects. Even you find it alarming, but please avoid those subjects so that it must not create any controversy, which may create a problem to the later stage. You should be very, very clear with your research questions so that it should be understandable. Just for an example, why are social networking sites harmful? Rather than that, we should have a clear statement like how are online users experiencing, or how are, this is the first part, or maybe how are online users social networking sites, Instagram, Twitter, are harmful. So it again demonstrates the clear understanding about the topic. So these are some of the do's and don'ts once you go with the problem selection. So I hope to the first part, at least we are clear that is how to start with the problem selection. Once you are firm what we need to do in a research work, then you should proceed with the literature review, and after that getting those points into the records, and then you proceed with your work. Proceeding to the next part of today's session, and that is an art of writing a literature review. So my fellow members, a literature review is nothing new to all of us. It's simply I am brushing upon. I always suggest that to develop the paper, rather than writing the introduction, paper or your thesis work, rather than writing the introduction, first of all, you should finish with chapter of literature review. Or first of all, you complete with literature review. Even you develop a research paper on it. If it is a part of your thesis work, dissertation work, develop a paper, get it published, and it is much better if you make a presentation on that paper so that you can get the valuable insights about your work which can be modified and rectified for your future purposes. So ultimately, literature review is simply an analysis, critical analysis of the published work which has been done by the certain experts earlier. It provides a summary, classification, comparison, and evaluation. It also provides an author's knowledge about the particular field of study, which includes developmental histories, theories, phenomena, methods, and outcomes of their work. Again, one question comes to our mind that why we should review. Answers are same: to identify the work done on the similar topic earlier. So we need to keep our work somewhat unique to get into insight to the proposed research work, to enhance the knowledge of your field, to understand the various tools implemented in their studies, and reveal any gap exists in the literature. So almost all of these points I have already covered, so I'm not discussing. Here are a few more definitions are given. So research literature review is as helpful in seeking new lines for inquiry, gaining new prospectors, and so on. So overall, I would like to say that it provides a framework for relating new findings to the previous findings. Okay. What does this literature review is doing? It is providing a base for the previous findings which can be incorporated in new finding. And along with that, it is having much more importance because when you are writing the discussion chapter, at that time, this provides a base for it. Whatever you are having your results must be accompanied with the literature review, what you have studied earlier. You need to correlate their outcomes, their study with your outcomes and your study. It may match, it may not match. That doesn't matter. But ultimately, discussions are backed upon with the literatures you have studied earlier. So again, I suggest whenever you go with the literature survey, you note down the key points of those readings, because it will be very difficult in the near future to identify the sources from where you have collected this information. Along with that, you also note down the outcome or the results of the study of the paper you have read, so that this outcome and study will be helpful in the discussion chapter. Then, without establishing the state of the previous research, it is impossible to establish how the new research advances to the previous research. So, for extending the work, again, the previous research is been required. And that is why the literature review is been suggestible. Writing the review papers. At least there should be 3 broad objectives. That is, pre-research objectives are there, During research objectives are there and after research objectives are there. So this on we should review on the basis of these three elementary objectives. I will be discussing later. So this is how we define review, literature review, REVIEW. So R is related with the relevance. This indicates that you should focus only on the related topics and not more than that. When you go with the e-resources, it is the ocean of information. You will be flooded with those information. So just simply go through the related information and rest of the papers can be avoided. Question again arises, how to identify the relevance information? Should we read the whole 30-40 pages paper? No. In that case, first of all, you read the abstract. It will provide you an overview about that particular paper. Then you directly go to the conclusion and correlate that abstract with the conclusion. If you find something meaningful to your work, you can get into the chapter of that. Otherwise, you can leave that paper and move to somewhere to some another paper. So it should be whatever the data you are going to collect and read should be related to your research paper. Secondly, E stands for the expertise of the author. Once if you are the primary scholar, just very recently you have added yourself as a research analyst, a research person, research scholar. So in that case, you need to devote more time. But to my fellow members who are already literate, whom some of you might be the guide, they know it very well how to identify the literature reviews. So that expertise depends upon your educational background, qualifications, expertise, learnings, and which are then regularly cited by other authors in the field. Third stands for V, that is the viewpoint of the authors and the organization. You need to identify which type of paper you're going to develop and what will be your target audience. So if it is on the author's guidance, if you want to develop paper basis upon on your own thought, so just try to move in that manner. If you are developing a paper in order for the society, then you should rethink upon how it is going to be beneficial to the society. Just like one example I have quoted, person working in a cigarette company will never try to accept that anti-smoking reports and suggestions because ultimately it has been associated with his or her bread and butter. So even we know that smoking cigarette is injurious to health. It is very, very harmful to the society. And persons wants to conduct a research, so he will try to prove that smoking cigarette is not so harmful to the society, rather than the pollution generated by the vehicles are more harmful to the society. And let me share you that I have gone through some of the papers. I stands for intended audience. Again, we need to identify which type of audience. Is it for a common man? In case of common man, just try to avoid using the jargons. Don't try to use all technical words. The paper should be in a very simple and understandable language. Even also when you are presenting in a conference where there are the participants from the various fields. So avoid using the technical words so that it should be understandable by all of them. And in case if it is a scholarly audience, then you can always focus upon all technicals, then formulations and modulations. Again, we need also to focus upon that your work is intended for the large or the small readership. When in case of it is for large readership, you can simplify your work. When it is for limited audience or viewers, then you can be more descriptive. E stands for evidence. Our opinion supported by scholarly evidence is a particular referencing style used properly and constantly. So, whatever you want to justify, please check it out that it was been properly addressed earlier, and whatever the citations you are using should be properly referred, so that the adequate credit must be given to the source from this information is been collected. Just for an example, you can see this is the link which I have credited here from where I have collected this information. So the credit must be provided either in the form of link or the at the same page, or it should be in the form of references at the end of your paper. And W stands for when published. Whatever referencing you have been taking, just try to identify when it was published. Usually it has been embarked that recent publications must be considered. Too old data may not be very, very helpful or fruitful. Again, nothing has been defined. For someone, more than 3 years data may be too old. For some, it may be 10 years data. For some, the 100 years data may be equally helpful. If you want to identify the average rainfall in the particular month in Indore city, so just simply 5 to 10 years data is not sufficient. At least you will go for past 20-25 years record, so that we can have an adequate average or proper average to identify the outcomes. So it all depends upon your choice. Too old data is of no use. Similarly, when you publish the papers, some of the journals may take a very, very long time. Even sometimes it may be more than a year to getting the approval. It may take additional 6 months to 12 months to get your paper published. So when we talk just in terms of finance, the 2 years data is not having so much importance as compared to the recent one. So if the publisher provides you an opportunity to update, please do it. I can share my own experience. Long back, I sent one of my paper to Finance India. Now it is a Scopus-based paper. It took, I have submitted, I waited for a long, I have communicated number of times with them. Then finally I thought the paper is not been accepted, so it may not going to be published. So I also forget. Near about after 2.5 years, I received a communication from them. Your paper has been accepted and you please provide the complete paper once again. 2.5 years is too much. So again, I request them to modify and to rectify. So definitely that affects my results also. I need to update all of those things. So I did it and I resent it. So this is an additional exercise we need to go. So please focus upon all of these elements. This can be a structure of the review. If required, you can take the screenshot. Review also and must start with an introduction. There must be an outline which indicates the purpose of writing a review, maybe in a few sentences. States the need and importance of the topic for review, the scope of review, the topic to be discussed in your work, criteria used for the selection of literature, that is the types of sources, data, etc. The literature review must end with a concluding remarks. Conclusion can be as a whole, or it can be on the basis of objectives, and it can be further subdivided in the form of subtopics. So when we are in the dissertation process, it should be classified objectives and sub-objectives. When we are developing a paper, in that case, it can be in single paragraph. The literature gap must be highlighted in the literature review itself. Some may say that there is a separate chapter of it. Few may agree with, few may say that it should be the part of methodology. Few may say it may be the part of objectives. But what I feel and suggest that it should be the research gap should be the part of literature review, so that it should be very, very clear that this is the reason for getting this paper developed. Once you have done all of these things, once you are ready with your review, then go with the grammatical check. Once again, n number of softwares are available. You can put your content online and you can check upon it. In case of free softwares, I could not guarantee the authenticity about those softwares. But in case if it is a licensed work, your software, then definitely we have an hope that your information will not going to be used by some other people. So go with the grammatical check. Personally, I can suggest the use of the Grammarly. You can install this software in your MS Word. It works properly. There are two versions. One is free version, second is paid version. In free version, it will help you to identify the grammatical errors. In paid version, it will also help you in rephrasing the sentences, and even it will, if request, it can provide you the plagiarism also. So at the end, we need to check plagiarism also. Fine. We know it that 10% is the maximum permissible limit. So try to reduce your plagiarism below 7 or below somewhere 7 to 8%. Because it all depends whatever software you have accessed and where this paper is going to be accessed by some another plagiarism software, there may be a variation between it. So try to maintain the level of 7 to 8%. In case of if it is above 10%, you need to reduce it by up to 10%. Otherwise, your paper will be rejected. Just 1 second. So here is the review process. We have already discussed there should be a selection of a topic. Identify the most relevant sources of your topic. Search and refine your search. You can have a broad search, broad view search. Just like being a management person, search about the related topic related to the management journals or articles. Then in case of management journals or articles, you can refine it as per your requirement. Just like it may be finance, it may be HR, it may be production, any of it. Again, you can redefine it. Again, if I talk about the finance, then it can be subdivided as banking, maybe insurance, maybe capital market, maybe any other of it. Again, read and analyze your data, and finally go with the writing the literature review. So here is a description about. Topic selection may be a time-consuming process, because ultimately it all based upon your idea, what actually you want to do. If we are very clear, definitely we can save time. But if we are not clear, then it's better to get some reviews in your, read some reviews, get yourself very clear with the idea, and then try to incorporate it. So selection of the topic, what I say, it may consume 10 to 20% of your whole of the time. The views may differ from person to person. This is my perception. Establish your research questions. Organize the literature into logical categories, which may be again related to your subject, topic, areas of your questions, etc. So be specific. Make sure and understand the concept, that is the broader and narrower terms. The narrower your topic, it is better to understand. I try to understand, I try to identify the reasons of increasing the non-performing assets in the banks. NPA stands for, just in very simpler terms, that is that debt or the loan provided by the bank which is not recoverable. So it is a broader term. I want to identify the NPA unrecoverable by the banks. But that is not sufficient because more than 100 banks are operating in the country, including all private and government and all of it. Public sector, not government. Sorry. So you need to very define, specific. To measure the performance of X bank in terms of NPA for the period, and please define the period also. It may be 3 years or the 5 years. A comparative study can be made between the two broad categories. Just like you have seen the students, particularly in project terms, they come up with like that comparative analysis in the financial performance of the private and public sector banks. You need to identify how many public and private sector banks are operating. And could it be possible to match all of those data? Absolutely not. So it is very broader term. In that case, we need to specify those terms so that it should be completed within a specific time range. Step 2, identify the sources from where you can collect the topic. If you go through print media, the goodness, it is very easy to access and readable, less stress on the eyes. But the problem that we need to type all of the material along with following the plagiarism policy. But initially, find out the books. You can have basic definitions, their characteristics, basic theories that are very easily available in the books. Then journals, read journals and the articles or something printing media material, you can go through that. It can further exist with the help of the theses and dissertations. The benefit by accessing them, you will get a clear understanding to the whole of your work, how that person has proceeded with that work, so that it will provide you an idea how and which type of steps you need to follow. So theses and dissertations can provide a huge database for it. Even you can access the case studies if available, conference papers, e-prints, and the government or industry reports are very, very helpful. These reports are helpful in publishing the data. Along with that, you can always use the e-source of material. But what actually we people nowadays doing, we are relying heavily on the e-sources. About 90 to 100% of the data or the material is being collected through the e-resources. It again depends upon the authenticity. If e-journal, if you're having a subscription of e-journal or any of the e-resources, it can be considered as an authentic data. The goodness that you can simply carry over those data to your work, but don't forget to provide the credit, and it should be as per the available plagiarism limit. Try to use the dictionaries which will be helpful in defining the various terminologies in encyclopedia. But avoid the data which has been collected with the help of Wikipedia. It has been assumed that it is open source, hence this data can be modified anytime and there is no authenticity of this data. So where you can search all of these things, it can be searched to the various websites, just like for few references like UNISA, SSRM, Google Scholars, etc. are there. You can even apply the filter engines so that you can collect the specific information, just like by adding and or some of the thing logical brackets, so it will filter the information. Otherwise, you will get the tons and tons of pages on a single click. Read and analyze those data. Already discussed that it should be divided into your themes and sub-themes. So you can distribute those data into various subcategories as per your requirement, or it may be as per the objectives. So whatever the relevant data is there, you keep it and then it will be bifurcate simultaneously so that it should be a ready reckoner for the future references. Do they present one or different solutions? These are the questions must to be answered. Is there an aspect of the field that is missing? How well do you present the material, and do they portray in according to the appropriate theory so it is suitable to you or not? Do they reveal a trend in the field? The data is useful and having a meaningful information, or there may be a ranking debate. These are the some of the things we need to find out while reading and analyzing the data. Once you have collected the data, you have gone through the various papers. It is the most time-consuming process amongst all the various steps in literature in a review or developing a paper. Now it is necessary to develop a literature review. So we can classify it into three broad categories. One is the introduction of the review. Secondly, how it indicates how you have review, how your review has been organized. So chapter that it will contains the text, body text, which includes the headings and subheadings. It may be further classified. And finally, it must end with the summary so that the gist of the whole of the work must be available to the reader. It can be possible that many of the readers may not be interested to read whole of those works. You have quoted 70 references. So readers may not be interested to go through all those 70 references. So a brief summary provides an insight about all of it. Now, once you are writing, at the same time, you can also have the temporary referencing. Just like this is one of the content we have used in our work. If I go with referencing, it will take time because we need to refer in a specific format. Secondly, we are not clear that this content we are going to carry over or may not going to carry over in our work in the later part. So initially you have noted this content, put the reference at the same time during where you are having your literature review. Don't worry, it will be rectified and modified and taken off from here later. Even if you are referring some web pages, so simply copy and paste those pages over here, and later on the referencing will be done as per the guidelines. So it is a ready reckoner. In future, whenever you want to access this information, simply you need to click and it will take you to that page. So these are the temporary referencing. Temporary referencing can be done in two ways. Once again, one just like where the content, below the content, but don't forget to highlight in some other color. Otherwise, you will assume as a part of your research work. And secondly, the temporary referencing can also be done in the form of footnotes. So we are at the page of references in MS Word. It provides two things. One is the citation and second is the referencing. Here we can select the mode of citing and referencing your material that we will discuss. And here you can simply put a footnote. See, insert footnote. Footnotes are those type of material which are not very important and may be used in the future to provide some additional information. But for us, this footnote is simply a source of information. Once we have finalized with our work, we will carry over this footnote in the form of references as per the specified guidelines. So there are two modes. What I have told you, here is some content and you have put a material over here, that is the referencing. And if you click footnote over here, this type of information can be uploaded. So automatically by default, it will start with number 1 and it is going to add upon. So these are the ways of putting or highlighting the references. Next is ways to organize your literature review. Conventionally, historical mode is the very popular. to write the literature review, but it should not be mashed up with the years. This should also follow in a chronological order. Historical information means that whatever the happenings has been done earlier must come earlier or first, and then we should keep adding upon. It is good when we are talking in terms of historical informations, geographical informations, but whence might be possible that today's model is more appropriate as compared to the previous one. So after first or second referencing or citation, it is necessary to quote the current reference and after on again the previous one. So that model is not been permitted under historical literature review. It very clearly, you can see with an example that it moves in the chronological years. It all depends upon your choice, which methodology you need to adopt. So you can see just an example, same. Like these are the various scams, global crisis. So we have quoted 92, 94, 98, 1, 3, and so on. And we can even add a new crisis or a scam in 2023. You know it very well due to the bank scam in USA. A point arises with a good paper can be developed. Due to a scam in any banking sector in USA affects the capital market, Indian capital market, or the impact on the forex reserve, or impact on the FI's investment. Those who are finance people, this is particularly meant for them. Let's please, you can avoid it or you can leave it. You have to organize the literature review. So this is how one example I have quoted. Divide the work on the when we are talking about the historical organization, then also it can be subdivided in the form of your objectives or hypothesis. It's all your choice. Maybe subdivided or maybe in the paragraph form. So to determine the efficiency of IPOs here in the chronological order. You can see over here again in the same order. Even when you are having the several studies in your work, so this should also be arranged in the chronological order. Large number of citations are quoted over here, but that should be rearranged in the chronological order. That is mandatory. Second, you can arrange in the form of publications. So here, the most related information to your paper will come first, and then you will proceed with the next one, which may be earlier or which may be related to the later part. Like 1998 comes first, then randomly 94 to the related, and then comes the 1995 as per the required information. The third way is the thematic. It is related to the subject or a particular subject. So very, very specific subject, it should come first. All references should be quoted over there and should be followed later. This is meant only for the conclusions of the review. So how to write conclusion? So the conclusions can once again in the objective wise, or it can be in any identified gap. And third, it should have an overall perspective to the topic. So these are the three broad steps must be followed while you are drafting the conclusion for your review, not for the paper. You can use the distinct tables for the comparative analysis. This can also be the one of the mode. We will be discussing citations and referencing in your future presentations. So I'm not going to talk much over here, but simply citations. And when we say what is citation, so it is in quoted text which is used in the chapter of the paper. So whatever you are referring, simply a small reference has been quoted in a specific format within the chapter is known as citation, and more description about this reference comes in the form of referencing, which is quoted at the end of your paper or the thesis. So in short, we can say referencing is descriptive information about the publisher, and citation simply quotes that from where you have referred this information. I've used the APA style. Again, I'm not going to cover much of it. Single author, you can have the surname first, then the year. It is for APA, American Psychological Association. You can quote the surname, and this it can be even at the end of the paper. Then you can also include the page numbers. If required, it can be quoted along with it. I'm talking about the citations, not references. It will be in later slides. This is in case of two authors, first author surname, second author surnames, and then in bracket the year of publication. Again, same thing, you can also include the PP, page numbers. It can be at the starting of the sentence, it can be at the end of the sentence. In case of multiple authors, if it is more than two, you can use the word ETAL. ETAL means and others. It is a Latin word, it alia, that means and others. So ETL can be used. Here again, it has been used at the end. Along with the page numbers, it can be quoted simultaneously. But once you are providing the references, you need to provide all the authors information in referencing. This is basically done only to save space, because we have a limitation of print in print media, but in online media, we are been having a liberty about it. This means one in-text citation means large number of citations are to be quoted related to the same information. You do not want to describe each and every researchers in detail, so you can go ahead with inside citations, but don't forget the historical duration must be carried upon. Early information must come first. Moving to referencing, it are the sources from where this information are collected to be referred in the specific style. It should be clearly mentioned. Secondly, you need to follow the journal style which is already been defined in the publisher's guidelines. And if not so, then you can follow any of the standard guidelines which has been provided by these agencies, just like APA, Chicago referencing style, Harvard referencing style, MLA has been there, basically largely used for the languages, linguistics, Vancouver, and many more. Even MS Word provides you this facility to provide a ready-made reference to you. It requires the data, and it is going to convert for you. So you can see this is per once again APA, surname, middle name, first name. This is the format. I'm again not going into details about it. And these are the various ways you need to quote those references. But it should be uniform. Uniformity should be there. Even if you are using the web resources, it can either be in the alphabetical order, or it may be various web resources can be quoted after the textbooks and the journal referencings. So it's all your choice. I already talked what plagiarism is all about. It is presenting some another's data into your own name that comes under the plagiarism category. And ultimately, we should try to phrase the sentences in our own word, try to avoid those sentences where they are not referred or the author has refused to or refused to allow you to carry those contents, because it comes under the plagiarized category. You need to take the prior approval before publishing copying the data. But there are certain sources available, just like government statistics and so on, which provides the free data access that can be easily used. But once again, you need to provide the source of collecting those information. Otherwise, again, it comes under the plagiarism category. These are the very common mistakes we should try to avoid. Source your literature do not clearly relate to the research problem. You do not take sufficient, these are some of the problems which are to be avoided. You have not taken sufficient time to define and redefine, and ultimately the time pressure exists, and you need to submit the paper as and how in the condition. There may be a higher probability of getting your paper rejected. So please focus upon it. Don't rely heavily on the secondary sources. Also try to identify the primary sources to collect the data, because ultimately whatever is your original work, it should be always on the basis of your own primary data. Another's primary data is secondary for you, but the objective of that person and yours is totally different. So those data that person has maintained as per their requirement and not us. So authenticity has been question mark. Accepting another researchers as a valid findings and interpretations. Whatever the others are interpreted, you assume to be correct and you included that in your work should be avoided. Do not describe the such procedures that were used in identifying the literature review. So these are some of the common mistakes to be avoided while developing the paper. So these are the few references. Here I have already disclosed a disclaimer that all the related information taken, which all belongs to their own copyright property. Few I have cited, few I may not, and that credit goes to the original sizes. This is from my side. Thank you so much. So we can have a question round. A short question round within 5 to 10. Ma'am, hello.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, ma'am.
Sir, this is Riya Mishra from Jaipur, Rajasthan. My question is that I'm very new to research, sir. My question is that how many research papers or articles are needed to be included in a literature review for a thesis, for a research proposal?
Number one thing that it all depends upon the uniqueness of your topic. Suppose it is a very, very unique of its kind, you may not get a large number of papers. Number two, again, you should be always move from latest to oldest. So as such, nothing has been defined, but I think at least you should read through 25 to 30 papers related to your objectives. If there are 3 objectives, at least you should move ahead with 70 to 75 papers. There is a possibility that some of the contents may be commonly used in all 3 objectives. So you can use it. Nothing harm in it.
Sir, can you listen? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Continue, please continue.
Yeah,
Sir,
no.
this is Dr. Meenal from Greater Noida. I wish to know that whether there is a scope for secondary data papers in Scopus or not. And if it is yes, then how much and what things we should consider for, secondary paper.
Nothing like that. All secondary data papers are equally acceptable. It must match the required information. When we talk about the Scopus journals, the level is very, very high. They are very rigid about the plagiarism. So you need to reframe all of the sentences. Otherwise, their softwares will catch it out and they will simply reject it. So you need to reframe and it should be properly cited. Both of the things are equally important. Then your own inputs must be readable, just like your findings, your results, that all belongs to you. So that should be more strong as compared to literature review and the introduction chapter. They believes on originality rather than the getting the secondary form data. It takes time to get the paper acceptance also. Is it clear, ma'am?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Nothing like that. Particularly when we talk about the finance area and this all the management papers, they are largely based upon secondary data only.
Hello.
Sir, if like suppose nowadays I'm looking for writing something on Kutch handicrafts, so I'm not able to getting how to write on primary database because I can't interview the artist because I am in NCR, Greater Noida. But yes, I wish to write something about handicrafts which is not that much noticed by our markets, Indian market. So how will you able to guide me that how I can frame about this thing? And my objective is to tell that how we can market these kind of handicrafts.
Ma'am, my first suggestion that you go to the agencies, government agencies, which is related to, because each and every state they are having their own agencies. I'm exactly not knowing about agency for your state. Just like MP Handloom is there, so you can directly go and meet the officials. They have the complete data with them. They will provide you how to proceed, number one thing. Secondly, you can visit their website. So there are large number of their own papers, maybe working papers that are been published, and some reports have been published, so that can be also used for developing your own paper. But you need to largely depends upon the primary data, because you are going with an unique work.
Actually, sir, there is not much of the work available if I speak about handicrafts, and especially that's why I picked up this particular topic, because Kutch handicraft is very good, but yes, artists are not having that much recognition in the market. So, can we write something? I mean, I want
You
to.
see, you need to identify the reasons why they are not being recognized in the market. So that becomes a real challenge, and definitely you need to move to the this handicrafters who create them. So I think that primary database collection is more important as compared to secondary data.
So actually, sir, for primary data, I need to interview artists. So this will be difficult for me.
No,
So
no,
better, I think I should I'm planning to design few marketing strategy, or tell how these artists can get better recognition and platform to show their products.
fine. You will either you can discuss me at the later part, or even you will get more insights about it in your hypothesis development.
Okay, sir.
So either after the session also you can contact, or you can simply put your queries to in the group also. I will try to answer over there, because time is
Okay,
a
sir.
restriction.
Yeah, sure. I can understand others are also having questions. Right, right.
And just back to back, I'm
I'm
having one
sorry.
more
I'm sorry.
class, and their students are waiting. No issues. Please carry over with another question.
Sir, can you please share the slides for thorough study?
Yes, I will share it out. Please allow me one day. So probably tomorrow I will be share it to you.
Okay, sir. Sir,
It
I
is
have
a
mentioned two questions in the chat box, sir.
you please read it out, because I am on the screen, so I can't read it out.
Okay,
My
okay, okay,
PPT is open.
okay, sir. Actually, I'm working on social inclusion, sir.
Okay.
Social inclusion of tribals and women in
Tribal
Northeast.
women
Yeah, yeah.
of
Tribal
Northeast.
women. Yeah, yeah. So social inclusion chapters. What I'm getting that maximum of the social inclusion literature. I'm not getting literatures on social inclusion. Maximum the authors are scholarly writing articles most focus on uh, social exclusion itself. Social exclusion, evolution of social exclusion, reasons of social exclusion. So maximum cases. So I'm not getting social inclusion scales or frameworks. So how to measure it?
I can suggest her that you either get a membership of some institution which are having access to, just like JGate, or even you can have a membership for IIM, which is very nearest to you, if it is there.
Yeah,
Or
IIM Shillong is there in Northeast. There is IIM
yes,
Shillong.
yes, sir. So if possible, being a research scholar, I also been a member of the IIM Indore at the time of my research, and it was been surrendered once I was in awarded with my degree. So they are very cooperative in
Okay,
that way. So once you get an access, now you can access thousands of journals and magazines and papers which we can't afford to access. So
okay,
this
sir.
will provide you a base for it. Again, the madam, what she just inquired, and more or less you can correlate your topics with each other. So you can, she can also help you out, and you can also help her out.
Yeah, I'm also working on a paper, sir, Manipuri women, Manipuri women, regarding Manipuri handloom, because Manipuri people are leaving this traditional jobs in
Yes,
the
sir.
states, even in Northeast. The Manipuris are leaving their traditional cultural or ethnicity based handloom activities, and they are moving uh, towards another occupations. And
Government departments will help you out a lot, sir. All related departments, handicraft and
yeah,
food.
yeah,
है ना?
yeah, yeah.
And secondly, if possible, I'm not very sure about, again, that state, the NGOs may provide you if they are largely engaged in it. So they also have a data. So you can contact and you may get some information from them.
Yeah, sir. I'm contacting with livelihood missions, etc., sir, so that I can get contact.
Yes, sir.
I like that, sir.
Right, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.